Hey, what's up? It's Bon. Today I'm going to talk about The Division 2 and an announcement they made today about the implementation of a campaign called Project Resolve, which is going to lead to the balancing and fixing of a bunch of issues in the game that have existed, probably some of them since the game came out, and how that's going to impact the planned content and how it's going to impact things moving forward. Okay, so here there's a blog on the official The Division website if you want to go check it out for yourself. I'll try to remember to put a link down below where you can look at this with your own eyes. So the idea, here's kind of the timeline they're putting out, that this is they say a 2.5 month test and learn program where they're going to have 2 phases of PTS. Season 3 will still come out, but it'll be delayed by a couple months, and then continued support after that. So this is going to begin extremely quickly here in a couple of days. I believe they said that pre-download for the first PTS phase will be coming up here in the next day or two, only on PC, obviously. They're going to do that for a couple days, get some feedback, and then in mid-January, come back and do another PTS, implementing more of the changes that they're planning, which we'll talk about here in a moment, and then getting more feedback from that and trying to implement a lot of this stuff for Season 3, the Vanguard season, which we expected, and they've said is going to take place in New York City. So I'm assuming it's going to be a manhunt there, where we're supposed to learn a bunch of things about the Warlords of New York campaign and things that were happening that maybe we haven't heard yet. So there's that. And then it has the continued support for year 6 and onward. So they've, I guess, kind of at the same time confirmed there's a year 6. I have some thoughts about that, along with all of this stuff. But let's at least take a peek before I begin ranting. So for the PvE improvements, they're going to take a look at global events. They're looking at each of the individual global events. I actually really don't care for any of these. I've never really enjoyed them, but obviously a lot of people do, because there's a few of them they run a lot. That, like, say that they have a delay. There's a few of these that they'll run extra weeks of it because people like them so much. So that's cool. I'm glad they're going to take a focus on all of this stuff. The global events in general, when the game eventually does reach its end of life, will be a really big deal, because they'll probably be running those moving forward. And it makes sense for them to work on that, because, for as much more content as it looks like we're getting for Division 2, it will end one day. And much like the Division 1 currently reruns all of its old seasons and global events, the Division 2 will do the same thing. And this is a good way to keep that, able to be enjoyed. They're going to reset and work on projects as well. The game modes in general, they talked about wanting to take a look at and re-up. I think I have to imagine, like, the descent mode and countdown and the summit. I'm sure there's people who really enjoy those. I guess I know for me, all 3 of them were a play it for a couple days maybe thing, and then okay, I get it, and then no more. I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure there's people who really do love it, and being able to do some optimizations to that will be good, much like the global event thing. When this game one day is no longer getting new content, or even between content drops, which are going to be extended, it seems like, this seems like a reasonable thing to work on. The expertise system, they're kind of configuring that and how it works, and making it basically easier. And then weapon balancing and gear balancing. What I would say is to acknowledge that it seems like they're basically trying to make us more powerful. I've seen people comment that, like, especially since Warlords of New York, our agents have seemed a little squishy and maybe not as powerful as they once were, and that they're, a good way to bring back the fun in a game like this is to just distribute more power, to make people feel more powerful, and to be, more oppressive to the NPCs and such, especially in PvE. They talk about new features here, with, changing things in the inventory system. They're talking about this tinkering menu system where you're going to be able to do some of the things that required going to stations before. So basically, to make us more mobile and make us less dependent on coming back to the home bases and things like that. That's just quality of life stuff, which then leads into the quality of life updates part of this, where they talk about making significant changes to loot crates, and talking about armor kit changes. They all of the PvPers can finally rejoice. They're getting their instant heal back, where you're going to be able to burn an armor kit and to get a quick 25% boost back to life, or to I believe it's health, or to armor, and you'll still be able to use the armor kits normally to get a full replenishment, if you're able to do that. They're also going to mess with the watch, and all of those bonuses, the SHD bonuses and stuff like that. They also talked about PvP, so trying to make conflict more viable. A big part is getting rid of the expertise and the Shade Watch bonuses. That's something people have been asking for a really long time. For status effects, this is for mostly, I assume, PvP and the DZ, but I'm sure conflict is affected as well. They're basically going to make status effects a little less OP, which from my last delving into the DZ, which was a while ago, it seems like that's still an issue, where it's just basically a status effect party, and it's just maybe not as fun as it could be. They are also talking about talents. This is something they talked about doing even before the game came out, of trying to balance some of these things separately from PvE to PvP. So it looks like on here they're going to be adjusting a bunch of weapon and gear talents. The DZ in general, they're going to make changes like making the going rogue action go from 5 seconds to 0.75 seconds. The duration of the first rogue rank has been extended from 20 to 30 seconds. So essentially you have that long to actually do a rogue action to keep your rogue status. And players with the rogue status will be unable to switch loadouts or individual gear pieces for the duration of that rogue status. I'm not going to pretend like I've been, hardcore in the DZ in the last couple of years. So I'm assuming those are all changes that they're looking at. To me, this is very much we are going to try to satisfy those Division 1 players who prefer Division 1 PvP by doing a bunch of this stuff, which, okay, cool. That's fine. I've said my piece on all that stuff, so I won't get too much more into it. And then we have, among the numerous fixes with Project Resolve, some that PvP players will appreciate the most. The issue allowing agents to aim from cover is the shield glitch. They think it's been fixed. And then some other issues. It seems like it's PvP specific. So let me get into my thoughts about all of this together. So I think this is interesting. I think doing this makes sense. I understand why it's happening, especially with them confirming a year 6. I think for people who are currently still playing the game a lot, this is probably a good thing, I assume. I'll have to wait and see the reaction from the people who I follow who do still play quite often. Where it comes, I can only give my perspective. I'm someone who played multiple thousands of hours of the first game, who has played, I think, 800 or 900 hours of 2. So maybe not quite as dedicated as the first game, but I've still played this game more than most people, likely. And that has been pretty minimal for the last few years. Essentially, since the end of year 2, I've been kind of just dabbling, right? And so what has been happening to me over the last couple of years, they basically took off year 3 essentially, and now we've had year 4 and year 5 of content. And for me, what was tough about that is that these manhunts, like, I appreciate the effort put into them. I appreciate what they're trying to do. But what they've amounted to for me, after I got sick of grinding 100 level battle passes with, okay rewards. I used to pay for the premium one, and then I was trying to grind them without, And then the last, gosh, probably a year and a half, 2 years, I just haven't really tried to even grind at all. I basically just show up when there's a new manhunt target. So, target 1, 2, and 3, I show up when those are available, knock those out, get the little story snippet, and come back for the fourth target, which then leads to the main target. Those have typically been pretty fun, and I've really enjoyed them. But they're pretty minimal. I mean, if I'm coming back every week to do the global event and the time trials and all that, if I was still into that, maybe it would feel like, bigger content. But basically, it's an hour of content every couple months for me, which is cool. And I enjoy coming back and playing, but it's the only thing that motivates me to come back. I don't care about the PvP in this game. I appreciate the PvE, and I played a lot of it. And while I would love to be that person that goes into and does legendaries and heroics and all of that, I'm just not there. I'm not here for that anymore. That was a Division 1 thing for me. I'm here for the story, basically, at this point, and any new experiences they give. So when they've done these manhunts, when they've done, the summit, and they did the descent mode most recently, and the countdown mode, all three of those, I was hoping for any longevity out of them. I was hoping for anything that would give me any of those underground vibes, where I played more underground in Division 1 than I did survival, as much as I enjoyed both modes. And nothing's done that for me. It's just my personal take. And now we have the situation where year 5 was announced. The season 1 and 2, season 1 had descent mode. I ended up not really caring about that much. But it was fine. It was whatever. And then season 2 came out, and it's been fine. I don't really like this rescuing people manhunt structure. It was an interesting thing the first time, and then I don't really like it anymore. I think it's been played out. And the story being told, like the stories being told in these manhunts, are very, very minimal. Like they're pretty small. They're good. Don't get me wrong. If the person who writes them is watching this isn't a dig at you. You do a great job. That's a fact for me. But it's only so much, and when it amounts to a couple hours of new story content a year, it's wearing. And then year 5 was announced, the season 1 and 2. Season 3, going back to New York City, learned some more stuff about warlords and Keener and stuff. I'm still interested in that. I'm bummed it's delayed, but I'm still interested. And then season 4 looked like it was going to be this DLC that we've pretty much assumed is in Brooklyn. It was going to be a new area to play in, a new story to play through, I hope a more substantial story, at least a few hours. And it was going to be, I assume, a new manhunt for season 4 along with the DLC. And to me, it was going to be this nice wrap up of the game, of the Division 2. It released in 2019, wrap it up at the end of 2024. That's a solid, 5-year run for a game. No complaints, right? Like, plenty of complaints, but, happy ending, right? So then they announced this, and in my opinion for a while has been, I don't want a year 6, because, even this year 5, they already had to extend out, the periods between each manhunt so they had time to finish the content, which was fine. But now we get this big delay to do this thing. This Project Resolve should have been done 3 years ago. And I understand that's an easy hindsight thing. That's not like a point I'm really trying to make, but it kind of is. This should have been done 3 years ago when they were doing that replay season. Now I know for various reasons, that they weren't even sure if the game was going to continue at that point. So doing this didn't make much sense. But I guess in my head, I'm just having a hard time figuring out how it makes sense now. And how it makes sense to keep doing content. They know their numbers. They know their stats. There must be financial incentives to continue doing this. There must be enough people playing to justify doing this. But I guess in my head, either you're doing this for the existing player base, which is fair. You're taking care of your players. Ubisoft does such a good job with doing this. You look at games like For Honor and The Crew 2 and all these games that weren't really that popular, and they just get supported for years and years and years because they are popular enough. And that's something that's kind of unique to Ubisoft. So props to them for that, including here on Division 2. But it's just, for me, I just, is it for the players who are still playing? Because it surely isn't to bring new people in or bring people back. Because I know for me, this year 5, I was playing through this content basically on the promise of this DLC. Of like, okay, I'll slog through these 3 manhunts, these 3 seasons, it's fine. I'll get through them. I'll try to keep up with the story. And then this DLC is going to hit, and then I bet we don't have anything for a couple years while they work on Division 3, which is probably more than a couple years away at this point. And for it to get delayed, and not just get delayed, but the DLC to get delayed to 2025. I mean, that makes it hard for someone like me. I'll play Season 3, probably, but like, to what end? So Season 3 is going to start, I think it said, in February, where I assume it was supposed to start a little bit earlier. And then there's no Season 4. Season 4 was the DLC, and if you look back at that website, there's just no Season 4 listed. It goes straight to Year 6. So I assume Year 6, Season 1 is going to be the DLC, and it's going to be that missing 4th season from Year 5. So that means that, Season 3 is going to start in February, be done by, the end of May, I guess, ish. And then is there just no content from June until 2025? Like, if that's happening just to make this Project Resolve happen, I'm assuming that the things happening in Project Resolve are essential to even making that DLC happen. But then they announce a Year 6. And the best comparison I can give is, I was really hoping the DLC was going to be that nice Season 8 of Scrubs, where you have the 2-part finale. It wraps up so well. You see what happens to them in the future, to this crew, this cast of people that you've watched for, your through your late teens and early 20s, and you've watched them grow up as you've grown up, and the final episode hits, and you're like, oh, that was great. I can't wait for the next show I really enjoy. And now with this delay, and with finding out that there's going to be a Season 6, it starts to feel like Season 9 of Scrubs. Or it starts to feel like the 14th season of a show that you still watch, but you kind of stopped liking it back in Season 8. And you keep watching just because you do like it, you want to. And maybe it doesn't have the juice anymore, right? And I guess that my overall thoughts on this, as I try to wrap it up with this almost 20-minute video, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the question here. Is putting all this work into Division 2 going to be worth it? Like, is this... I bet the DLC is going to be great. But other than that DLC, which if it's anything like Warlords, it's going to be like a few hour experience, and that's cool. But are they doing all this work to have more years of content with seasons where it's essentially just like 45 minutes to 60 minutes of new content every other month? Like, I guess I don't see the vision. And if I saw their numbers and their metrics and everything, I bet it would make sense. I bet I would see it and be like, oh, of course they're doing this. That makes complete sense. The last thing I'll hit on is that this move basically confirms to me that we may not see Division 3 this generation of consoles. If they're going to do a Year 6, and if they're doing all this work, I'm going to assume we're looking at a Year 7 and a Year 8 moving on into 2025, 2026, 2027. Very likely that we're probably not looking at Division 3 until 28, 29, or 30. The impression is they haven't even started pre-production on that game because the Avatar team is wrapping up their Avatar and they've got DLC to make. The Division 2 team is doing Division 2 stuff. And the Star Wars Outlaws team, which is the team I assume will do Division 3, isn't even done with Outlaws, and we don't even have a date for that. That is presumed to be 2024, but it may get pushed to 2025, which means they may not even start pre-production on Division 3 until 2025 or 2026, and then you're looking at a 3 or 4 year development cycle, and then you're looking at 2030. And I think that's why they're doing this. And then Heartland is kind of hanging in the wind. That's a whole different story that I literally can't talk about. So if you've sat through this with my sick voice and my ranting for the last 10 minutes, I appreciate it. This isn't a negative thing. Yannick is amazing. The Division 2 team is amazing. Ubisoft Massive is the best. They are Ubisoft's best studio, and I don't think it's even close. I just, as an individual fan, this is really disappointing because this kind of kills my personal desire to keep playing the game until that DLC comes out, basically, except maybe dabbling in Season 3. And I just hope that there's some really good reasoning behind this. I will assume there is. But that's kind of what I have to say. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I genuinely am curious. If there's enough responses, I may do a video about that to just kind of talk about how other players' sentiments may be different than mine. Could be interesting. If you like The Division, if you like Ubisoft, if you like Massive, if you like other gaming news and videos and stuff, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Find me all over the internet as Bond Diesel, including over on Twitch, where I stream a few times a month. You can also check out my 2 gaming podcast. The Bonfire podcast is a weekly game news podcast, and the Mass Effect Hypecast is a video just about the next Mass Effect game, where I will bring on guests and I'll do some solo shows on speculation and news and so on for that franchise. You can find both of those on podcast platforms or right here on YouTube. That's all I have for this one, so until next time.